My name is Hazel Krebs. I use she, her pronouns. I am an author and speaker inspiring the world to live enthusiastically. Before I get started, I want to just say thank you to Cassie. Thank you. And the Johnson County Democratic Women's South for inviting me here. I really appreciate every opportunity to speak. I am building a speaking career and everyone is memorable, and I appreciate this opportunity. Thank you. And also, I want to thank everyone who's here. I'm so honored. I've been to meetings before here, and it was much smaller. So if you're here to see me, thank you so much. I truly appreciate this so very much. I am, as I developed this speaking career in this book, I'm just like really excited. I love my life. I love every single day I get to be me. And it's not something that I have had for my whole life, but recently I published this book, Enthusiastically-me, in January of this year. It's my story of discovering a life I'm enthusiastic to live. It is actually a transition before a transition, and I'll go into more about that transition in just a moment. But since then, I've been speaking. This is what I want to do with my profession, speaking, and that's why I'm recording for my website. So 2 years ago, this whole process started. When I sat, it was roughly August. It was August, roughly this time 2 years ago. I sat down at a Panera Bread deciding what I should do with my life. At that point, I was in a corporate job. I don't mention the name of the company, but I was in a corporate job, and I was somewhat struggling with where I fit into the world and the corporate structure and how I wanted to contribute to the world. I sat there and I truly was like, where do I fit in? What contribution can I give? And my first thought was going, okay, let's look at the wanted ads. What job can I do? And I said, no, I'm not going to do that. I've already done it. So I was thinking, I think about like my journey and all these journeys as a trip through a forest, right? So I'm going through a forest and I see just like, you're in the trees. When you're in a forest, you try to get your bearings straight, which is what I was doing 2 years ago. I climbed a tree, proverbial tree, and I'm looking around. Now just imagine you're climbing a tree and you see the forest as far as your eyes can see, right? That's my life. And all of a sudden, as I'm climbing this this tree 2 years ago, I see a mountain. I see a mountain, and that mountain was, I can contribute to the world the love for who I am, and hopefully inspire everyone to have it. Because even 2 years ago, just 1 year after my gender transition, I thought what I had was truly special. I came up with the title before I wrote any other words, Enthusiastically-me. I came up with my website, Enthusiastically-you, which is now a company. I have an LLC. In next month will be 1 year that I'm a business owner. But I was, thank you. Thank you so much. So just that journey began 2 years ago as I climbed down that tree, started writing my book, and moving on to the next journey towards this mountain. I really love like all of my life right now, and I feel like this mountain, I'm like at the edge of it. I'm at the climbing this mountain where I'm on the verge of a speaking career that has this, like my dreams come true, published one book, started working on my next book. But even beyond my career, I am a mom of 2 kids. In a few weeks, I'll have 2 teenagers. One, my 12-year-old will turn 13. As of earlier this week, a freshman in high school. It has been such a joy seeing them grow up. And I just like love the relationship that I have with them. I have so many friends. This life is so incredible. Like if I just took a slice of my life right now today, I have more friends now than I did for the first 40 years of my life. And that's when I transitioned. By the way, I'm 42 years old. So I've transitioned at 39. So I'll say 40 years. So 40 years of my life, mostly alone, mostly quiet, mostly just in obscurity, not having friends. But now I have this life that I truly love, and I absolutely love like every part of it. And I've actually started dating a little bit this year, and it's been one of the best things ever. Having so much fun with it. If you saw that I had a boyfriend on social media, he's been gone, and I've had a lot more fun since. So like my life, I love it. I love it so very much. And when I'm talking about like being on the edge of this mountain that I'm at right now, I want to just like tell you how different it was not that long ago. So this book is actually, like I said, the transition before the transition. Most people see me, they see a trans woman, they think a book about a transition is a book about a gender transition. But this transition is actually the years leading up to it. So it starts in 2018. And I'm presuming that most people haven't read it, so I'll go through some of the details of it. But I just want to make sure everyone's sort of aware that where I was in my life was one of the darkest places in my life in 2018. And March 30th, 2018 is when the first chapter of this book takes place. Just so we're aware, I do have an introduction where I put a warning on the first chapter because it's extremely detailed on the mental state I had on March 30th, 2018. So I was driving around, so I had a plan. I had been engaging in self-harm up until that point, battling substance abuse, depression for decades. And that's where you start the book. You're literally in the car with me, thinking the thoughts with me. And it's in this like forest, I don't even see the mountain, right? The mountain is not even to be seen. Instead, I'm at where the darkest part of my forest is, the swampy part. And I don't know if I can say this part, but if you are in Lion King and you think about the hyenas in the elephant graveyard, like that's what it is. I'll bleep that part out of the thing there. But that's where it was. So dark, so like alone, so like lost. Like in this forest, I was lost. I didn't know where I was going. And it culminated in this day on March 30th. So this picture here is a picture of a bench. It's a very specific bench here on the cover. So I know some people will know this because they've read the book, but it's actually set in Antioch Park. So there's a bench. This bench, I could point to it if we were there. The set is in Antioch Park. And so as I'm driving around, completely lost, completely just like desolate, all the things that were going through my mind, somehow I find myself at this park and I find this bench. The weather wasn't great, so there was actually very few people there. March 30th in Kansas, right? We don't know what it will be. It wasn't snowing, but I won't go into that story, but it wasn't snowing, but I was there by myself and just thinking through my life. And at that point, I was able to make it through. So most people, if you don't know, like if you have those episodes, like you just have to survive like a little bit, and you tend to go on and sort of go about your day. Well, that's where the book begins. And the next couple chapters, I talk about more of my life in 2018. I told you, so I'm sober. I've been sober for a few years now. I was just suffering through a substance abuse issue. Oh, by the way, I came out as gay in 2018. And in my marriage, drinking became worse, partying became more, and I was basically, where I was rock bottom, and I stayed at rock bottom. I somehow find myself more lost in that jungle. Talking about the substance abuse issues, waking up, blacking out, like waking up hungover every day, blacking out most days. That's where my life was, completely just lost and dark. Then, towards the end of the year, I actually had this question. I was talking with a friend of mine, my former spouse. I call her Rachel in this book. She and I stayed friends. Like, as one spouse comes out as gay, and you're both into men, you can kind of make the marriage or the co-parenting work a little bit more. And so we made it work. We stayed friends, separated. But then I was talking about how being gay just didn't feel right anymore. So it was about 6 months, that's it. And I was like, something's different, something's wrong. And she actually asked me this question, do I think I'm trans? And my answer was, I don't know. For those of you who don't know trans people, that answer is a very trans answer. I realize as I've, talking about it more, most people don't question their gender. And it's something that I was doing for decades. Questioning my gender, questioning my sexuality, and I was finally asked in 2018. If you don't know, I transitioned to 2021. That's the second part of the book is that question I've asked myself over and over again was, how would I even know if I'm trans? So that's the end of the first section. So you get this dark, lost person I call he in the book. I don't use my dead name at one time in the book, but you hear about this situation. And then 1 year later, March 30th, 2019, I go back to Antioch Park. I seek this bench. Reality is I actually go back March 30th almost every year, weather permitting. I don't, venture out into the dangerous area if it's like lightning or whatever, but I go back every year to march to Antioch Park on March 30th, find this bench, sit there, usually take selfies. Usually I know how to do good selfies if you want some help with that, Sherry. So I do that every year. But in my book, what makes my book extremely unique is that when he goes there on March 30th, 2019, he actually meets somebody. She's actually sitting there on the bench waiting for him, but he doesn't realize she's waiting for him. It's this character called Hazel. It's a future version of him. So most of my book is this venturing through the forest, back from being lost, through the forest to this light of self-identification and being happy. So this conversation happens over the course of years. He and Hazel are talking. It's a very tumultuous experience. Just a side note, I didn't realize, I'm going to say my story is remarkable, but I didn't actually realize it until I published my book, and people were just flabbergasted at what I was going through, and I'm like, oh, I didn't know that. I thought everybody just had a drinking problem, had depression for decades, had their ideation and all these things. It's no, actually, most people don't. But I was going through these years where he and Hazel are having this conversation. The conversation itself didn't happen. I didn't have a conversation with two different versions of myself. However, they have this conversation about the impact and the things that happen in their lives. And I'll use their, because it's two of them having this conversation. But he's going through the things that are happening in my life. He's going through the forest through 2019 and 2021, where he's lost a job, got sober, had a relationship start and end, broke a heart, had my heart broken. But he's having all these situations that are dark, and he's moving through, and he's going towards something he doesn't realize he's going towards. He's going towards Hazel. He's going towards this idea that I can have a better life with happiness if I follow her. One of the quirks of my book is that as he's going through sobriety, chapter 5, I call it detox. So I actually had such a problem that I couldn't safely get sober on my own. And so I spent nearly a week in a facility. It's Cottonwood. I think it's in Olathe, or it's. So I was there for an entire week, and that's actually the week after they meet. So they set up sort of a meeting, and he couldn't show up. Comes back, starts talking about being sober and all the problems he has, and how he's talking about how it's so hard and how it's downfall and just I'm a failure and all this other things. Whereas Hazel's there talking about how she's learned from it and how her light, how she couldn't be where she is without that. And then, April 2019 was quite the year, or quite the month. It felt like a year because I went into detox on March 31st, which is Trans Day of Visibility. It's like the universe was screaming at me, and I still didn't want to listen. So go in March 31st. My first day sober was April Fool's Day. Most people, if you don't realize this, a lot of people go into detox still drunk. I was no exception for that. So April Fool's Day, the one date I talk about in my book is April Fool's Day, when I was in detox and really sad about it. And going out of detox, it's really hard. It's really hard to be sober after drinking for a long time. But again, he comes with this sadness, darkness, where Hazel comes at it from happiness. She comes from, happiness because where she is required her to be sober. And it's this idea that these two versions of ourselves, the future version of ourselves, the person who's along the path ahead of us, is grateful for where we are today. And I really believe in this so much. I believe that we have this power to take anything we do to make it good. No matter what happens, it can be good. If we simply find a simple lesson or something is going on for a future version of ourselves, anything we can have can be good. And even I was just thinking about Stacy, we talked about losing an election, and here she is, had a job with the governor, had this other opportunity. Like, there's different points in our lives when we're looking through our journey where we can be sad, can be dark, but I look at that as more of like, here we are going down this path, right? When I'm standing here looking at my mountain that I was going towards where I am right now, it's not like I went straight there, right? Very rarely is our path through a forest, let alone our life, direct straight. We have to sometimes move around, and that's okay because we're always making progress. Even if we're moving hard right, trying to go straight, that's progress. We think through a forest, like as I visualize the forest, I'm visualizing a lake. I mean, I can swim, but I don't want to, right? Like, I want to go this way around and walk. I also don't want to mess up my hairs. So like, that's like also important, but it's okay. As we like think about a future version of ourselves who is ahead of us and in the future needed us to be here, needed us to take the right down the path, needed us to start a relationship that ended up breaking our hearts. And one of the most difficult parts of my book is this relationship that lasted like 3 months. I was in love, ready to like marry this person and all these things, and they broke my heart. But what's so interesting is that it took a whole solid year. It took a whole year to recover from a 3-month relationship, but I did. What I look at is how important that was to my gender transition. That person I call Sage in here, they gave me the information, gave me the like hope and like confidence in myself to be who I am and be present and be myself and be excited about who I am. And truly, like, that was the foundation. That was the foundation. Like, heartbreak was the foundation. And one of the saddest chapters in there, is I went back to a place where we had our first date, and we had, a lunch after a hike, and I was so excited when it happened because being a drinker before meant most dates were drinking and doing that and whatever, but it was the first date. Like, I went on a hike, had lunch on a blanket, was sober, was so optimistic about it, and then weeks later, months later, I'm so devastated, and for some reason I go back there and like try to like relive it. I relapsed around that time, but I was able to kind of gain my strength, pull myself up, find my bearings in the forest, and start going towards the direction that I wanted to go. And that's Hazel. That's me. So the whole conversation that they had over the course of a couple years was like, building through my life that I had, from 2019 to 2021. And then one of my favorite parts of the book is at the end where, I find my name. I'm happy to talk about how I found my name, but I found my name and he still wasn't ready to like go, right? They have this like last conversation. And this last conversation, I use a lot of imagery in my book, a lot of imagery around parks and trees and seasons. So it's, my sister who's read it, she's never been to Antioch Park. She's never, she's only been to Kansas City to visit. She was just like, oh, it just feels like I'm there. And I think it's like so important to feel like you're there, not only in my story, but your story. As you're looking through your story, looking through your path, put yourself in there and be in that situation where you are today, thinking about that future version of yourself. When I start talking about, they have a conversation, the last conversation they have before he's gone is at a coffee shop before going shopping. Shopping was a super fun part for me, even though I didn't wear my clothes. Like, I'm really like big into like fashion and everything, and people often comment on my clothes, and this is a new thrift store dress that I have here. But they're going shopping and he's nervous. He's nervous because he's found a name and he's ready to move this journey forward as I was. And when I found my name, it was one of the scariest, like most fearful things while being one of the most exciting things. Finding my name was the first time that I saw a path that I was almost too scared to go down. Historically, I would have been too scared. I reached the point of depression, substance abuse, because I was never following my own path. I was following the path dictated by society. I grew up in the 80s and 90s where HIV/AIDS meant being, gay was a death sentence for certain people. Matthew Shepard wasn't that much older than me, scared me because I thought someone could get in my mind and hurt me. So I just went down the path of safety and not being myself. When I found my name, it was the first time that I said, I'm going to keep moving forward. I'm going to write my own path. I'm going to move forward to whatever that mountain was for me. And it was scary, but it was invigorating. And I'm just like so excited. And I love my name. I love my name, Hazel. I love it so much. Anyone just wants to make me smile, I say Hazel. I love my name so much. But the thought process going through the book was that when I was transitioning and deciding to move forward, I finally decided I can be happy. I can take my own path. I can move forward through the forest in my own way. And even though I use the phrase, he says, like, she's been the light, in the abyss. There's only one thing that I can see light of, and that is Hazel. So my whole life, the being a mom, having all these friends, being a speaker, being an author, being all these things were transitions I didn't know I was going to do. But I finally said, I'm going to take control and make this life that I have one that I'm enthusiastic to live. And I'm doing it every day. And now I'm just like, everyone should do it, right? So my story, like where you are right now, where you are in this moment, August 15th, Big Bear Cafe in Olathe, Kansas, you have the capabilities to be anything you want to be. You're on a path. It doesn't matter where you are on your path, where your journey is taking you, whether it's the mountain over here, this is really wonderful, there's a mountain over here, or anywhere. But you have the power to find your own path, find your own life, one that you're enthusiastic to live. And I talk about transitioning each and every part of you to that point. I didn't have all these friends when I started. I just liked being social, something that's very, very different than my past. But I love it, and I love when people, I love walking into a room and people saying, hi, Hazel, as soon as I walk in. It's one of my favorite things. Being a mom is one of my favorite things. Being an author, one of my favorite things. Being a speaker, I have a lot of favorite things. But that's what I'm doing, is I'm saying, what am I enthusiastic for? And then I go for it. Everyone has the possibility to do that right now in your life. And I encourage you to climb that tree where you are now, see where you want to go, see where that mountain is, and start moving towards it. Sure, it might be overwhelming, thinking how far away it is. But remember, each step along the way, is a journey in itself. This day is a wonderful journey. I love being here, and I'm so excited to talk about this and move forward to my next one. But I really, truly love this experience. Life is about the experiences that we have together, independent, and all these things that we're doing and enthusiastic for. And I really encourage all of you to take that time. And thank you so much for taking this time with me. Thank you so much.